all happens in there. Magic's in there.
Goodness.
There's a little thing in there called a stator. Tiny little disc. It's got titanium blades and it twists everything together.
We're Jess and Dan, and together we've bought a semi-falling down farm in Scotland, and we're documenting the whole process of putting it all back together again into a family home with you guys. So if you never want to miss an update, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon. But for now, let's see what we got up to this time. You guys have been absolutely hammering us to remove the paint from this farmhouse. Whilst you guys have a point, it was actually in all of our preliminary bits and pieces that desperately needed to be done. There is more to this than meets the eyeballs, because we actually have a number of different buildings that need to have the paint removed, like fairly urgently, because something is going on with the paint that's been applied that means that the building's suffocating. We had to be smart about this, and also smart about how we can protect as best as possible the actual stone itself so it lasts for another few hundred years. We also want to try and protect as much of the existing lime mortar as physically possible. So if you've not been here since forever, all these buildings are super old, essentially. We're talking like 200 years ish. I mean, there or thereabouts. And that brings us to today, where we're going to focus on the main farmhouse. But please bear in mind that this actually is also suitable and useful for everything else. After doing some online research, we found the perfect tool for the job. It was time to book a demo, and after a little bit of a delay, we cracked it. And then it was panic stations, because we needed water and electric at the main farmhouse. Let's catch up.
Reasoning behind the madness is because we've got some pieces of kit coming for a demo and they could do with power. We've got a generator on site, but we're not sure whether it'll pull enough. So let's just go and flick the switch. The switch that we're after is this one.
Over in the main farmhouse, I'm trying to also make the power work at this end, but alas, things weren't as straightforward as they seemed.
This one looked normal, didn't it?
Yeah.
If you actually read them, they're all heaters. Downstairs hall heater, big sitting room heater, lounge heater, and something bedroom heater.
So I think that's obsolete then.
So these are all the fuses, like the old school one.
Power didn't work, dead. Don't panic, we'll cover that in a future video in terms of the plan of action. However, Ricky was here, which meant we needed to commence. Can you do here? Is it too close to our windows?
No, that'd be fine. You might just want to push the window up a little bit.
Oh yeah.
You can go really close to the windows with a steam cleaner. They won't damage it.
Just like super careful.
What sort of result are you looking for? Getting it back?
I want it.
Fair.
It needs to go back to stone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for us to keep as that, but to just start.
As a base.
Yeah, start again. And before we could test any of the machines anywhere on all of these walls, we first of all needed to try and get some electricity. And therefore we used Dave the roofer, thank you very much, generator, and gave that a test to just see if it would give us enough power. But first we start with water.
Will that fit?
Yeah, that's just straight on.
And then just let me know when you want me to turn it.
You stick up now, that's good. Cheers.
I'm so nervous to see if this is going to work. So we think it's highly likely it'll kick off a generator.
Yeah, because the plant pulls 32 amps and that's 5 kVA, same rating as that. So that's dedicated off one plug. So that's split plug. So
Right.
it may run for a little bit of it, but if it doesn't, we'll try and
Do it alternative.
Yeah. You having any nasty surprises, or is it?
What, every day?
Sadly, the generator couldn't manage it.
I'm pulling more power than that's given out.
Yeah.
How big's your extension cable?
You ready?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Go.
The hub was on to try and find power that was a little bit closer than the cottage, but unfortunately the dairy failed us, and therefore the extension cable daisy chain began, are not recommended. So we should be able to hear if it works because something makes a noise.
So yeah, if you put your ear to that, it will work.
Yeah, I can hear it from here. Yeah.
I'm glad you can, because I can't. Oh yeah, never mind. How can you hear that?
I told you I've got really
You've
sensitive
got
little
good hearing, I've got good eyesight.
sensitive little ears. It's really nice to feel useful, and today I got to turn a tap on to make the water work. And with that, the scene was set to test this machine and talk through exactly how it works and why it's so incredible. Alrighty, so what you're seeing here is the DOFF Integra machine. So DOFF is a machine that actually uses water, but not like a pressure washer, but kind of like a pressure washer. So in a very brief format, what it does is it uses some water, about 3 to 5 litres per minute, but then it heats it rapidly to 150 degrees Celsius. So the majority of what's coming out the end of that is actually steam. And this has an amazing effect on most things because it actually just melts it. You can run it at different temperatures and different pressures, and it can just clean surfaces or it can strip them. But we didn't know if it would be enough. It was like the great present unwrapping, only the present was the farmhouse, and we were trying to work out what the heck was underneath it. What do all of these different layers contain, and how are they going to react to the heat? We didn't know whether we needed this machine, whether this machine would work to strip back to the original stonework, and basically how it would all work out in the end. Would it save the farmhouse, or would it damage it, or would it do nothing at all? And as you can see here, it is getting through some of the layers. We'll touch on that a little bit more in a minute, but this process is really gentle. It's all approved by Heritage England and Scotland for use on old stonework, so we're not causing any damage.
What do you think the white paint is? Do you think
It's quite a soft paint. It's affected by heat, so that means it's probably like an oil-based or masonry paint. It might stop it breathing, potentially.
so that might be part of our problem. And then the cream one,
Quite brittle, that one, so it's coming off in chunks. That's probably a lime wash. Sometimes this will get it off, depends how stuck to the surface it is.
Is it gonna,
Dan then tried to explain to me what the different colours were because I didn't really understand what is the actual real stone here and what's not. Turns out the black stuff is not real. That's bad things. And I think we need to talk about that in a little bit more detail. But first, Ricky made a square rectangle section that we could utilize as our starting point for testing both this machine but also testing another one, because we wanted to get this right back to the original stonework.
Yeah, some of that's really thick. You've got some parts that are quite thin, which come off really easily. Some parts that hold it on to not keep it under it.
That kind of obviously I know that's cut off. We ideally want to get back to
Don't panic, this fragment was already loose and chipping off. Nothing's damaged the wall. I was a little bit worried that the machine would put too much water on the surface of the stone, which would exacerbate all of our problems that we have at the moment. However, the wall was almost completely dry.
toasty.
Looking at the layers of paint that we have, I thought I'd try and come and show you guys what was involved in the ingredient process here. What's on the farmhouse? We have a top layer of some form of oil-based paint, probably non-breathable, and that's on every building that we actually have. The second layer down is some form of a probable lime wash. That's the cream layer. It flakes off in chunks. Underneath that is the black stuff. That is a layer of bitumen-based stuff that isn't really good at all to have on solid stone. And then underneath that is a lime mortar based mixture thing that's fragmented and broken, not bonded to the stone. All in all, it all needs to come off. And this top machine only gets us half the way. And therefore, Ricky and Dan went back to the van to pick up a different machine that Stonehealth also do. I felt, based on the online information that I could find, that this wouldn't do anything. However, the way this machine works is really interesting, and it can be set on so many different settings that it could remove the graphics from a Coke can whilst leaving the can absolutely intact and undamaged. That's how careful but amazing this machine can be. It can also be really brutal. Depends what you use in it and how you use it. Now for this, we needed a compressor and we needed water, and that's it. I think I've missed an ingredient. The other ingredient is a granulate, an abrasive, a grit, a powdery, rocky substance, of which you can have numerous different grades. We're on level 3 for reference. The first machine that we looked at was the DOFF on the left. This one is the TORC. Different thing, completely different. Ricky's going to talk us through how this works, because to me, my brain was a little bit boggled. I know it does a swirly-whirly thing and puts all the things together with a swirly-whirly pattern, and in the process uses an abrasive method to get through nasty, stubborn material.
So what's that bit doing?
So this is the water control. So
Right.
we're going to put the mains hose on, And then it's going to go into the water pump, and then it's going to send the water up the hose.
Right.
So it adds water at the nozzle, so your granulate comes up the main blast hose, water meets it at the top, so you don't end up getting it blocked.
Right.
The last thing you want is wet granulate. All happens in there, magic's in there.
Goodness.
There's a little thing in there called a stator, tiny little disc. It's got titanium blades, and it twists everything together. So you've got your water coming in here, your air's coming up there, and your granulate's coming in as well. And it all fires out the top.
That's all very complicated. Sounds really cool though.
You can turn the water on if you like.
Okay.
Make sure you record stuff doing it.
Oh,
I feel like I have made it sound like they haven't prepared a generator for us. We just said we would sort that out. Don't worry about it. But the compressor they hired, prepared and made sure that that was delivered to site before the demonstration / testing procedure. Anywho, here we go. This is a nervous moment for me. Ricky started by bringing up this level 3, grade 3 of the rocky bitty bits that get pushed through to be abrasive. So we started off by pouring some of that into here, and then it was a case of literally just sort of testing the whole process and crossing all of our fingers and hoping for the best. We started on a new patch just to see how this would cope with getting through the paintwork, and it was actually less effective than using heat. So we knew that from this testing procedure. And then we started on the actual stone work to see if this would get through the bitumen layer and the mortar layer to take us back to the original farmhouse stone. This stone that our house is built from is really hard. Somebody did say once in a comment that it was sandstone. It definitely is not. It's more like a granite type material. It's tough, like it's solid stone here, like we're good, but the lime mortar in between is delicate, so we have to be careful that we're not actually causing damage in any way to either the stone surface or to the glue that holds it all together. Of course, it's going to need some repointing. We're not that naive, but you can see how this machine is getting through all the nasty, really tough man-made materials that have been thrown onto this. So that bitumen layer is being abrased off, the lime mortar or the concrete cement or whatever it is working underneath there is also coming off, and we're being left with the actual stone. So this is an amazing result for us to see. And actually, we can utilize soft, gentle, delicate techniques that will maintain the structural integrity of all of the buildings, but still work to remove it in a kinder way than traditional sandblasting or shot blasting would have done, which is a really good result for me. So you can see that section, we just watched a bit of slow motion. This is normal speed at work. So you can see how it's taking off, and the stuff that's kind of running down the walls that's black or grey, that is the particles. That's like the abrasive material that's been sent through that jet, whirled into that vortex motion and sent through with the air and the water. So that's the kind of what's making the mess everywhere. It's quite a messy job. I don't think we could ever say that it wasn't a messy job, but it's doing its job, which is brilliant. I'll let you watch a little bit of this playthrough before we come back together at the end to discuss the results. Okie dokie, let's have a look at this and see what we're working with here, because I realised this was a little bit quick and we have to talk about it. So this is our test patch. On the far right hand side, that's the before. That's the top layer of paint that's gone a bit manky and flaking off everywhere. The left hand side is the DOFF paint removal. That's the superheated one that heats to 150 degrees and basically melts stuff out the way. Then in the centre is the TORC section. That's the one that has the swirly whirly pattern of air, water and a granulate. That's what's taken us through all of the bitumen layer and the nasty awful bits and pieces, and has left us with the original stone. This shot was filmed minutes after we stopped, and you can see how dry it is. However, our results do show that we probably could do with both machines, not necessarily at the same time, and it's just for our specific use case where we've worked out that we've got paint layers at the top that can come off, and we've also got the underneath layers that heat isn't going to have an effect on. So let's turn back to Ricky to give us the verdict.
So the DOFF,
so
he's going to take the paint off quickly.
Yeah, so anything that's affected by heat, so that top layer of paint's coming off with the heat. That one underneath is probably a lime paint, but it's getting it off. I don't think it's bonded to the brick much.
No.
But whatever is not getting off, there's little bits left that the TORC will get off.
Yeah.
And then you're removing all that water that you don't want on there, all that lime wash. You could do it with the TORC, but you're going to use a lot of materials.
Yeah.
And it's going to take you at least 3 times longer, I'd say.
Okay.
So you want to doff it off, get all that loose stuff off.
Yeah.
Rinse it over the doff, just give it a good clean, see what's left, and then you can whiz over it quickly with the TORC. Depending on how long, what you want the end result to be,
yeah,
is how picky you could be. So
yeah.
You could do it all, and then you could come back and be like, oh, we've missed a bit, just quickly blast bits.
Yeah.
As I was doing at the end. Yeah, so it's...
Because the DOFF doesn't get through the bitumen-based, concrete-based. It could get through it with loads of time.
Yeah, it's concrete isn't affected by heat. That's the one thing.
Oh, yeah.
It needs to be abrased. That's the only way you can get concrete on.
Okay.
So anything heat-based, like moss, algae, oil-based paints,
yeah.
Stuff like that, the DOFF will remove anything that's affected by heat. Anything that's cement or carbon-based, that's the job for the TORC. It's designed just to remove carbon and cement. And again, I'm using like quite a coarse granulate, so we got 4 grades of granulate. That's our 3rd coarsest one.
Okay.
That stuff needs to be like collected and disposed of. So that's like byproduct of coal-powered power fire stations.
Right.
So, we've got dolomite, but I think because the brick's so hard, that's going to do a quicker job.
Yeah.
So I would use that.
None of them are going to damage the structure.
No, because it's such a hard brick. Like it can take the heat. Because granulate is softer than the material blast and that.
Yeah.
So it's not going to damage it.
No.
You'd know if you were damaging it. You'd see hitting in the brick, or you might see a bit of the brick blow out.
Yeah.
You'd naturally back off, and probably you can turn the pressures down or the temperatures down. But I had that on maximum on the DOFF, and the TORC is running at half its pressure that it can do.
Okay.
So it can go higher pressure and it can use coarser granulates. So
that might damage the mortar between the
potentially, yeah. So what I've set up to now, it's removing the paint, but it's not ripping the mortar out, which is ideal for what you want. Actually, going to rip loads of mortar out and have to repoint everything.
Yeah.
Well, I said, didn't I? It might be a case of we get the DOFF to start with.
There's no problem in buying a DOFF. We come up, show how to use it, go around the whole building with it, and then you think, right, it's time for the TORC now, so we can come up and bring that up and show you how to use it.
Yeah. That's what I suggested to you, isn't it? Might be the best thing to
because you can only do one at a time anyway. So it's about DOFF it all and then TORC it.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And so that leaves us with the end of our paint autopsy. We know what's on it, we know how to get through it, and we know exactly where to start. It seems like a big investment to purchase the DOFF machine now, but with how many buildings we have to do, it actually is the most cost-effective way. It's all about thinking smarter and hoping it works out in the end. See you next time.